Welcome to On My Way to Wealth, the podcast where busy Gen Xers can learn financial tips as they navigate life on their way to wealth. And now, please join your host, Luis Rosa.
This episode is brought to you by Latin Excellence. Visit latinexcellence.com. That's Latinx, CELLENCE.com or latinxmovement.com to learn more and shop our merchandise. You are excellence. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of On My Way to Wealth. My name is Louis, and I'm your host. Today, we have Rick Gillis. He's our returning champion. And he was here before. We were talking about leveling the playing field, and he's back out with his new book titled by the same. So I'm super excited to have him back and see what he's been up to. And I know he's going to provide great value for our audience here today and myself. So I'm super excited to have him. So after more than 20 years in the job search and career advancement field, and having worked with thousands of clients across the US and beyond, Rick has now created the Quotient personal value calculation process to help workers and their employers identify and assign value to individual job performance and accomplishment in a manner never seen before until now. The result of this groundbreaking method is that not only will equal pay for equal work finally be realized, but even better, proper pay for outstanding performance is now the new normal. Rick has been sharing these techniques to maximize and manage careers with audiences for over 2 decades. And today we're lucky enough to have him here for ourselves for, 45 minutes or so. So thank you very much, Rick, and welcome back.
Thank you, senor. I am happy to be here. Very happy to be here, Luis.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have you back because, we met, I was at an Alpha event and I saw you just do your thing, and I was like, wow, this is like such a cool concept. And you were kind enough to sign and autograph your first book, The Quotient, which I still have a copy of. And now you're back with the, 2.0, right? So I want to hear what it's all about, So how you been, by the way, with the whole pandemic thing and everything?
Doing well, man. And thank you. And I'll tell you what, candidly, that Quotient book, there's not too many of those out there. Candidly, I have a
collector's item.
I think I have 4 or 5 on the shelf that I kept. But the original book was called QTNT, which is pronounced Quotient, and that's a registered trademark. It is the name of my process that we'll talk about. But the new book is Leveling the Playing Field. And we are doing this today on the 27th of September. And tomorrow, September 28th, the book will be released by my publisher, Indigo River, and it's going to be distributed by Simon & Schuster. So if we're going from a self-published book to the real deal, it's pretty gratifying, it's satisfying, and it's been altogether 4 years worth of work, man. That's how long we've known each other now. About 3 years.
Yeah, congratulations. That's amazing. That is amazing. That must be just quite the gratifying feeling for you to go from self-published now Simon & Schuster. Yeah, that's awesome.
It is important because the distribution is the model. This bookstores can get this book. Anybody can order it. It's available not just on Amazon, but every bookstore globally. If anybody wants to know more, they can go to rickgillis.com. There is a pre-order. Actually, today I'm changing it to order the book, not pre-order. But it'll take you to all the different places you can get the book. Literally globally. I mean, most countries in the world have it available. That's pretty cool. You can't do that self-published.
Yeah, that's awesome.
People can go to Amazon, but they're not going to do that in Ireland. And well, maybe they will. Anyway.
And I'll be providing a direct link to Rick's website, rickgillis.com, where there is a link there for you to order it anywhere you are in the world, like you said. So you don't have to remember it, but rickgillis.com, and be sure to check out the show notes as well. Thank you for sharing that, Rick. So let's get into it. Let's talk about, tell me about the Quotient. I know you call it a very simple idea, a very simple concept. So tell us what that's all about.
It is. And Luis, here's the deal. The Quotient is so simple that when I first had the idea, when it first came to me, I remember thinking, this is wrong. There can't be something like this not already in existence. I was literally riding my bicycle around the neighborhood. And I had this idea, and I could see the value and the picture of it. I mean, I completely in my head, I saw the whole thing and the possibilities. And I stopped my bike because I could have fallen over. I was just that excited about the whole idea. And what before I tell you the idea, the next morning I called a friend of mine who's a chief financial officer, retired chief financial officer with a big hospital group here in Houston. And I explained it to him, and he said, Rick, this is new. There's never been anything like this before. And I was overwhelmed because, first of all, I have a business degree. I don't have an MBA. I don't have a PhD, but this came out of 23 years of working with people in job search, and it grew to this model. And that model is this: taking the value of your contribution to your employer. In other words, adding up all the wins you have annually with your employer. And listen, this is not just an annual thing. It can be a weekly, it can be a monthly, it can be department, it can be division, it can be individuals. Taking the value of all that you deliver to your employer and dividing it by your base pay. Now, that is what the quotient is. That the result, division, it's a quotient. So let's say, for instance, that I pay you $50,000 a year. And you, at the end of the year, we determine mutually, and that's what a lot of the book is about, is how to determine the value. Because paycheck workers, and that's what I call people who are on salary or an hourly check versus a commission salesperson, like I have always been. A commission salesperson always knows where they stand, how much money they're going to make or they're not going to make. If they don't sell something, they're not going to keep their job. But a paycheck worker doesn't have that same, what I call the accomplishments mindset. And so the book is a lot about telling people how to determine the value of what they deliver. So Luis, you and I work together, and I paid you $50,000 this year, and we sit down at the end of the year, and either mutually you determine, I determine, and that's part of the book, that you delivered $250,000 in value. So $250,000 in value divided by your base pay of $50,000, your quotient equals 5. Okay, now that is the nutshell right there. That alone is the big deal. And if somebody knows how to determine the value of their work, the contribution to their employer, then that's great. That is super. You need to do this, because here's what it comes down to. Because one of the things that I maintain about this, and this is for men and women, people of color, age, I don't care what it's about. I believe in equal pay for equal work, but I more believe in the proper pay for the best performance. Best performance only gets that pay if they can generate or defend, speak to a value and defend it and explain how they came up with that value. So you had that $250,000 divided by 50,000. Your quotient was 5. Now let's say that you and I work together, and you're a woman. Okay, let's say you're a Black woman, and I'm a mostly white guy, and my quotient this year was a 7, but yours as a Black woman was a 23. Now that means you delivered 23 times your base pay, where I delivered 7 times my base pay. And we're assuming everything's about the same. We know that the pay is not going to be right because women earn less than men and all that stuff. But let's assume that everything is very similar: certifications, education, experience, all that stuff. I get the raise, I get the promotion, I get the bonus, but my delivery was not near as high as your delivery was. What's wrong with this picture? It's now what has happened is, with the quotient, you have a defensible, verifiable valuation to the contribution you deliver to your employer. That's never been available before. Nobody's ever had this kind of thing. So your options then are, number one, you can go to your boss, which may not work because I might now be your boss. So you go to my boss,
Excellent point.
You go 2 or 3 supervisors above me and say, look, I got an issue. Here's my value contribution for the year. Here's my quotient. Here's my quotient. And listen, if somebody in your business does not understand the quotient yet, which all they have to know is you delivered 23 times your base pay. They don't have to know that the quotient score, your QTNT equals, whatever. Just explain that you delivered 23 times your base pay, where I delivered 7 times my base pay. You can go to your boss. If that doesn't work, you go to HR. If that doesn't work, the big deal option is you go to the EEOC. If that doesn't work, the nuclear option is you go look for another job, and you go to somebody who's going to appreciate what you're doing. That is how pay parity is going to happen. Because one of the things that I realized as I was writing the book, and as you know, and as you discussed, I've written this book twice, basically, with 2 different editors, the first editor, the second editor. And what I realized, one of the big takeaways that struck me, especially during this time, is that a lot of what I wrote about, and I didn't really understand this the first time out with the Quotient book, is that I'm telling people to quit waiting on the government or their company to make pay parity happen. This is a way for an individual to take it into their own hands and do something about it. And candidly, I'm hoping to create a groundswell. I hope to train people in this thing. I hope they'll read the book. It's a very easy read. I will tell you that candidly. It's a very easy read. And I have 14 Q studies in the book. Each Q study is a description of somebody I actually worked with to determine their quotient. And I have this all the way from an executive assistant, a chief executive assistant, all the way to a senior VP of a bank. I mean, so I've got from, valuable people to crazy wealthy kind of numbers that are delivered. I've got construction in there. I've got code writers in there, but I've got 14 Q studies in there. And those explain step by step how I came up with these calculations. So I am describing it, but I will tell you candidly, a lot of people are not going to know how to determine the value of their work. I mean, an accounts payable clerk may not realize, but let me give you a for instance. Let's say that this accounts payable clerk came up with a way of wrapping up accounts and saving 15 minutes at the end of the day every day for her office. I'm just making this up because I'm not a clerk. I've never done this before. But let's say that this person is able to save 15 minutes a day at the end of the day and teaches the rest of the team how to do that. And this is a story that I use for an example in the book. So if you take that 15 minutes time, and let's just make up a number, let's say times 10 people, that's 150 minutes. That's more than 2 hours of work. Now, if you take that 2 hours and determine approximately the value those people are being paid during that time, let's say they're making $25 to $30 an hour, and you have to remain conservative and you have to be defensible. So I would say if the average is 25 or 30 bucks, take $20 times that 150 minutes, times that 2 hours, 30 minutes, 2.5 hours, and multiply that out times how much money you're saving the company a week, 5 days for that. Multiply that times 50 weeks or 52 weeks if you want. And all of a sudden you're talking about some real numbers. 150 bucks times 50 weeks. And then if let's say you share that across your department, and then your department shares it with the sister company in Omaha and the other company branch in Buffalo and whatever. And pretty soon you have saved the company a lot of money because you had a simple idea that saved 15 minutes when you were closing the books, when you were doing your job. See, Luis, people do this stuff all the time. That's what I have learned working with my job search clients over the last 23 years. The more I talked with people and the more I dove down, the more I would say, well, how did you get to that? And they'd go, well, And wait a minute, do you understand that's an accomplishment in its own right? You're learning how to design that got you to this result is in its own way an accomplishment, and they need to be categorized as such. And that's the mentality. That's the accomplishments mindset. And that is what I have learned over and over and over. And this is working from new grads all the way to CEOs. People don't realize the value they deliver. And the more you're on a paycheck, the less likely you do. If you're a salesperson, you know exactly where you stand today. You know exactly how much you're going to make this month. You know, you may not even keep your job if you don't sell something this month.
Right.
The paycheck worker doesn't think like that.
Yeah. I love that you call it a mindset. I was scrolling through Instagram this morning. I followed this guy named Ed Milet. And he showed something that said, there will always be someone who can't see your worth. Don't let it be you. And I was like, wow.
Oh, wow. I love that, man. I love that. Don't let it be you. And I'll tell you what, I think back about my parents and stuff. I mean, neither one of them were college degreed. And my mom particularly really achieved an enormous amount in her life. And to be fair, she recognized it. My dad didn't. He didn't know what he was doing. He never did, going through life. And I don't want anybody who gets exposed to this idea in this book to not realize they have value. It's one of the things that I say. As a matter of fact, I got a review from Kirkus on the book just the other day, and I have it on my other screen here. And there's something here they said I liked. They're talking about me here. He comes across continually as workers' tireless cheerleader. Every employee, this is a quote from the Kirkus review. Every employee in the world has commercial value, he insists, me, And in these brightly written pages, he seeks to help them all make the most of that worth. I'm really proud that somebody who reviewed my book said that, because I do believe that. And then, listen, that is entry level. That is kids in high school working a summer job. There's value there. And so I always maintain, if anybody has been on the job for more than a year, they have value. And if they're not getting paid what they think they should be getting paid, then they need to pay attention to what they're delivering and how that impacts the company, how it creates revenue and or savings. And by the way, most jobs do not create revenue. Most create savings, and it's because people are efficient, they got hired. And so do not think that just because you're not making money for the company, if you're saving money, let me tell you what, the CEO is looking at that in the same way, because if you can do the work of two people, I'm making money with you. If it takes me having to stay on top of you, and then I find somebody that replaces you and they end up delivering twice as much value, your commercial value is not as high as it should be. So it's incumbent on the individual to be thinking about how much value they deliver and start. And I'll tell you what, one of the things that I recommend is that people start writing this stuff down on a daily basis. Literally at the end of the day, just write down what you said, go to your calendar, write a few notes, say, today I started. Because see, accomplishments don't happen in a day. They happen over an arc. And so I regularly go back and look at my calendar, and I will look back and see that 3 weeks ago or 3 months ago, I started working on something. And all of a sudden I go, whoa, wait a minute. Yes, that's when the start happened for what I just accomplished and delivered value. And that's what people need to think about. Accomplishments don't happen. The results happen in one day. But you got to be able to tell the story to back it up.
Yeah, that's powerful. And I wanted to point out something you said, because a lot of people might be thinking like, well, I don't necessarily generate revenue for the company, but you might be saving the company money, which is just as good, right? So that mindset of saying, hey, maybe you're not in a role that brings in the business, but you might be in a role that you actually save the company money, right? And that is really good. So, something that I read in the book stood out to me that you mentioned. It says that your work does not speak for itself. A lot of the times we've been taught to like, hey, just work hard and like people will notice, right? And then you have another section where you basically say that your employer is not responsible for pointing out your wins, and it doesn't mean that they mean bad, but right. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, two things. Number one, that your work does not speak for itself. You do. That is actually the subtitle for one of my books called Promote. And it's written about people who need to learn how to promote themselves on the job. And candidly, and don't take this sexist, women are lousy at promoting themselves on the job. Guys are better at it. That's just all there is to it. And I have no problem saying that. That said, to digress just a little bit and talk with anybody who has a problem promoting themselves on the job, understand it is not about bragging. It is not about boasting. It is about informing the powers that be around you that you bring value. That's what this is about. It's not bragging. It's not boasting. It's informing, and it's sharing your value. And that's how people get promoted. And I find too often that men have gotten that promotion because they know how to buddy up, and they know how to do that. Women need to share that information as well. So that said, tell me the other quote. It was about the employers.
Oh, yeah. The employer not being responsible for pointing out your wins.
Yes. Here's the thing. Employers, people get bonused all the time. People get, certificates and a medal and a silver cup and all these different things. And they get a pat on the back and they get just sent to dinner and all that stuff. And that's wonderful. But the fact is you want it in money. So I'm not going to tell you you're not going to get a pat on the back. I'm not saying you're not going to get noticed. And some companies are absolutely far better at this than other companies. However, don't wait for somebody to find out you did you did X job so spectacularly. One of the things that I say in the book is it's not uncommon for your boss to take credit for your job, for your work. And that's not necessarily incorrect or bad or wrong. Let's say I'm the head of HR and I'm with the CEO. We're having the CEO C-suite meeting and they say, hey, Rick, what's going on with that HR manual? Have you got it up to date? And I'm like, yeah, I got it finished. Well, I didn't do any of it. My team of 5 did all the work. I didn't do any of that stuff, but they asked me, I was assigned it. So it's not inappropriate for me to say, I got it done. I did. I oversaw it. I reviewed it. I signed off on it. I sent it up. Boom. but I didn't do the work. The thing is, when your boss is talking about hitting an accomplishment, there's no scrolling credits at the end of this list. There's no way to know
it's
that
not like a
Bill
movie.
and Jen and everybody else helped me. There's none there. So you have to be prepared to speak up for yourself. And once again, that's not wrong. That's not wrong. So while your bosses may be really good at slapping you on the back, what you really want, I don't know how many silver cups and certificates are going to pay the bills. That's just the bottom line.
Right.
So, and listen, that's why I also say too, when you've developed this accomplishment mindset and you start keeping an accomplishment inventory, which is that daily listing of, and once a month, once a week, making notes, and then you get to your annual performance review and you've put all this stuff down. All this is described in the book, and you come out a winner. The thing is, you want the money, you want the raise, or the bonus. And I talk about those three because you maybe had, from your employer's point of view, maybe this year you had a bang up year, but you haven't had any big years like that in the past. So we're not going to give you a raise, but we're going to give you a good bonus. Hey, take it. That's cool. Now, if you start hitting those markers year after year after year, absolutely your pay has to go up. Yes, a promotion should be in order. But in the beginning, maybe it's just a bonus. I don't have a problem with any of that. And it's up to you to understand where that value is and what you need to get to the next level. And one of the things that I always say is the more times you do this and the more you get into this accomplishment mindset, the more likely it is that you're going to be in demand. You're going to be found out in the company and you're going to get natural promotions. Maybe they want to send you to some other city to run the department. Do what you did here, duplicate it over there, or you're really setting yourself up to go shop yourself in the general market, which means job search. No question about it. You've only got, Luis, I don't know if you remember, and I think I had this in that PowerPoint I delivered for you guys in Las Vegas. I may not have had it, and this is a hard, cold fact. And I have a chuckle in my head. I'll tell you why in a second. The average career only goes about 40 years. I mean, seriously, if you think about it, most people get started in their professional career at about the age of 23, which is about the time people graduate college. Now, if they go on to advanced degrees, master's degrees, PhD, whatever, that, of course, changes. But let's just say 23. Well, the average retirement age is around 63, 65. So you basically have about a 40-year window to make all this stuff happen. And actually, this plays very much into what you do, Luis, in terms of wealth management. You're telling people how to get ready for that 40-year window, how at the end of that thing to be able to sit back and go, I did it. I won the race. And that's really, really important. So you only have 40 years to make this stuff happen. And so I don't want you to wait 6 or 7 or 8 years to implement the stuff that I'm sharing with you. I want you to start getting to it right now. I want you to be thinking about this stuff. And I'm going to tell you candidly, I'm very, very proud of this book, Leveling the Playing Field. This model works, and I have used it. Honestly, I've used it for years, but it was only in the last 4 years or so that I realized what it was when I came up with this quotient idea, this measurement idea. By the way, I didn't mention, Luis, when I came up with this idea of taking somebody's contribution to their employer and dividing that amount by their base pay, next morning, the very first thing I did is I contacted 3 different people that I know that are CFOs. One was a retired CFO. He managed a big hospital group here in Houston. I didn't realize the group was that big. He had 48 separate entities rolled up under the umbrella of this one company. Yeah, it was a big deal. And he had recently retired, and the man gave me an enormous amount of time. But when I told him this idea, he said, Rick, there's no such thing. He said, you came up with something new. And I was like, you're kidding. I said, you cannot tell me the individual value of an employee working for you? And he said, no. And I said, well, how do you determine? And so he gave me a scenario, and I'm going to share it with you because it's really important. He said, let's say we have a surgical suite. We have an operating room in an operation going on, and there's 11 people working, from the $35 an hour orderly to the $1,000 an hour surgeon. He said, when we're all done, we take up all the totals. We know the cost of the room. We know the cost of the equipment. We know the cost of the salaries. We know the cost of facilities. We know everything, materials, inventory, everything. We total all that up, and then we divide that. And that's where, the bill comes from that goes to insurance and then to the individual. But For determining the value of an individual, he said that we would take that total and divide that by 11. And I'm saying, wait a minute, you would take all this grand number and divide it by 11 employees, $35 an hour or orderly, $1,000 an hour surgeon. And he said, yes. He says, that's the closest we can get. Now, we know that that person, that $35 orderly, we know they have an immediate supervisor who can speak more specifically. That's understood. But as far as the accounting went, that's all there is. There is no way in accounting right now. So this quotient concept, the value of your contribution divided by your base pay, has never existed before now. So, and the book publishes tomorrow. So you're ahead of the scoop here, Luis.
Yeah. And, I was laughing because you opened up in your introduction with a joke that said, hey, a CEO was asked how many people work for him, and that he said about half, right? And, it got me thinking too, because your method isn't only beneficial for the employee. There's also the flip side to that. Like, companies benefit from this.
Absolutely. This is, thank you for that. The book is written about 65% of the book, maybe towards 70% is written for the individual. The rest of the book, the back end of the book, is for corporate and enterprise to embrace this model. So thank you very much for that. There's no question. Enterprise, everybody wins in this. Everybody wins in this. And one of the things that I had, matter of fact, my PR team, when I first was introduced to them and we were talking, this one lady, she's sitting here like this with her arms crossed. And she goes, well, where's all the money going to come from to give all these women a raise? And I said, it's not a raise. First of all, it's equalizing. It's the leveling of pay. So it's not a raise. If you just gave a whole bunch of people a raise and left out your high performers, you're going to have a stampede on your hands.
Right.
What this is, the quotient is a double-edged sword. It not only shows you who your winners are, it always shows you who your non-performers are. And as you eliminate those non-performers, there's the money that gives the people who are determining and developing, generating proper value. That's where the money comes from for this pay equalization to happen. It's not a stretch. It's not hard. It's a matter of, and anybody who doesn't want to participate in the model, assuming a company embraces this and teaches people how to do it, the line is drawn. Right. Go ahead and X that person off. Let them go work for somebody else. Let them go work for the competition.
Right. No, that's true. Because at the end of the day, you're running a business and you want to know which team members are contributing to your bottom line and beyond, right?
And if it's a small mom and pop shop or if it's GM, it doesn't matter. You need to know. And I'll tell you what, candidly, and I know this is an ongoing discussion, and I don't know if you've ever looked at it, Luis, and of course, I follow it closely, but a lot of the big companies are fed up with annual performance reviews. They're creating their own models, and I have a model that I put in Leveling the Playing Field at the back of the book, how to embrace this, how to take the quotient and these weekly accomplishment listings, and once a month, bring a list of your best 5 performance for the week to your manager and tell them what you're going to do next month. And, the thing with performance review right now, as we know it, is that you set your KPIs, your key performance indicators, you set your goals at the first of the year. At mid-year, you meet with your manager and say, here's where I'm at, here's what I'm doing. You discuss, are we going to make it or not? And at the end of the year, you have your annual performance review. In my model, it's about, and this is not my model, it's a friend of mine who's an author as well, and we are working together on this in the book. It's called Big Five, and Big Five is about presenting your 5 wins you had this month and the 5 wins you're going to have, or the 5 goals you want to set for next month. It takes 10 minutes per employee per month for the manager to have one-on-one time 12 times a year. At the end of the year, this quotient accomplishments contribution list, the accomplishments inventory, is completed because it's been worked on all year long. Everybody's in tune. Everybody's in time. It's not difficult. It's not grand. You're going to knock it out of the park this year. No, it's incrementally watching how you did what you did. And that's what's really, really important.
Yeah. And, I was thinking about the pandemic, like this model is even more important now because, sometimes, you might be in an office or somewhere where at least there is some visibility with the boss. Here, for the most part now, a lot of us are working remotely. So this accentuates the need for even more, right? To kind of show like truly what you're doing, right? Because there's less supervision.
There's 2 things to that. And first of all, yes, you're absolutely right. And I appreciate very much what you just said. There is a need for individuals to step up and Take the time to identify your accomplishments, determine an approximate value that you delivered, even if it's just you say 15 minutes about and approximately are okay to use at this point in time. And but the other thing about this is that oh, dude, I just lost my train of thought. I got so many things going on in my head right now. Give me back what you were just saying, because it'll take me right back to it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're talking about the need for doing this even more now during the pandemic because you don't have as much visibility.
Zoom meetings are a great place for you to, number one, share. Zoom meetings, more importantly, and this is the point I lost while I was thinking about it, is that a Zoom meeting where there's a whole bunch of people on the screen is a great place for somebody to stand out, because when you're asked a question or something, it's you all alone, individually, not a big room, not raising hands, not a team gathered, or in an office, a whole bunch of people working, doing the same thing. Zoom is a great place for people to separate themselves and show how good they are if they have this accomplishment mindset top of mind. So I'm seeing the pandemic as a lousy place to be for people who are not good at promoting themselves, but I also see it as a great place to be prepared to step up and say, you know what, my opinion's in your head. Nobody's ever heard my opinion before, or my ideas or my thoughts. This is my opportunity. And listen, write the notes down like I just did. Stop, say, hey, wait a minute, prompt me. I need some help. Okay, great. People are real people. There's no problem in any of this stuff, but anybody on a Zoom meeting can use that platform to shine. I do believe that.
Yeah, comes back to that mindset again, right? It's taking advantage of the opportunity, like creating that opportunity sometimes because you have the numbers to back it up if you've been keeping track of these things.
Yes.
So I know that you go into very detail in the book as to the how. So in essence, like the basic concept is start writing down your accomplishments, right? Yeah, as small as they may seem now when you first start things, right? Because then you can tie it all together over the course of time, right?
That's really well said, Luis, because accomplishments don't start big. They start small. And that's why you need to say, today I started working with John Smith on something he needs some help with. That's all. At the end, I'm not talking about at the end of the day, keeping a complete outline. I'm talking about 2 or 3 words, maybe 2 or 3 names. If you have email that supports any of this stuff, copy it, paste it, put it in your calendar, keep it there. Because when you go back, you need to be reminded of this stuff. And I'll tell you candidly, 6-8 months ago, you don't have a clue what you were doing. You've got to write this stuff down. You just have to. Like I said, I can go back in my calendar and I can look at dates and I can go, holy, I need to either follow up on that, or I need to finish up on that, or that's an opportunity I never completed. So I see those things. And this morning, as a matter of fact, I sent a text first thing this morning and I saw for an opportunity that was, and I let the ball drop, and that's not good. Now it's not so far along that I wasn't able to get back this morning and tell this woman, hey, and got it back in play. But you've got to go back and look at your calendar. And when you do that is when you start reminding yourself, wow, I had a pretty good day that day. And it evolved into this new project, this new plan, this new whatever. Big ideas come from everybody. They don't just come from the top.
Yeah, that's true. And you got me thinking about something. There's a section in your book where you mentioned that salespeople don't need the quotient process yet, right?
Yeah.
But it got me thinking, because I know a lot of our listeners are also self-employed individuals like myself, right? And it got me thinking, maybe I don't have a boss, but I do have the end consumer of my product, whatever that is, right? So if I'm self-employed, I should be able to also quantify things that I can later on use even to show my value to my existing clients and even to prospects, right? Because I can say, hey, I've helped X many households get out of debt, right? Things of that sort, right? I've saved my clients X amount of dollars over the course of the last several years, right? So I think the concept still applies, right? If you're self-employed and you don't have a boss per se in the traditional word.
I've been self-employed fundamentally for better than 15 years. And mine has always been based on how many people. Now, this is prior to doing leveling the paying field. I have been doing job search. I don't know for your audience. I helped start the very first job board in Houston back in 1997 in the Neolithically dark ages of the internet. We were in business for a full year before we had a search engine. That's a true story.
Wow.
That's how far back I go, man. But I have helped thousands and thousands of people land jobs. I've got 6 CEOs under my belt, senior VPs, executive vice presidents, all the way from new college grads to CEOs. And there's a lot of value there. Admittedly, in the beginning, I just worked with everybody, and I didn't charge very much money at it. And then it got to where I started getting real specialized, I guess, because one of the things that I do, if you were to call me and say, hey, I want to work with you, to find a new position, the first thing we would do, and I would discuss this with you and I would explain it to you and I would let you know this is not negotiable. And interestingly, this is in the book. And this all is part of what developed to create leveling the playing field. My requirement is if you were to come to me, I would demand, and if you don't want to do this, that's fine, because then I won't work with you. But I require you to give me 12, well, it depends on your position. If you're a brand new college grad, I need 5 to 8 personal best accomplishments. If you're a C-suite executive, I need 12 to 15. And I want these relevant, and I want you're going to write down everything about them you can remember. And if you don't remember it, you're going to go look it up. I want to know the who, what, where, when, why, and how behind every accomplishment. And I don't care if you're a brand new college and a brand new college kid, I would let that person go all the way back to high school, because high school is still relevant to what they did in college to help them land their first job. And one of the things that I tell young people coming out of college, you're only a first-time job seeker one time. That second job, you got to put on your big boy pants because you're going to play with the big boys. And now that's when you really need to do this. So if you can write down your accomplishments, tell me the who, what, where, when, why, and how, and give me some valuations for that. Now, and this is a mistake everybody out there writing a resume makes, they don't do this first, because after you have done this list, now you're ready to write a resume. More importantly, now I've got you ready to interview. So I take my clients and I have them put all this together, and then I can look at that full description they've written for me. And out of that, I will take what I call the what and wow sentence. Tell you a quick story of me, one of my accomplishments. And actually, this is Q study number 13 in the book. It's me. In the name, I use the name Brad in there, but it's actually
interesting. Thank you for revealing that.
Yeah, I don't mind telling anybody. Prior to moving to Houston and getting into the job board space, I was in the commercial leasing, office leasing space in El Paso, where I'm born and raised. I had 14 buildings, commercial buildings, on 20 acres of property that I managed. I had 185 tenants. I was part of a company that had 26 office parks across the nation. We were based in Jacksonville, Florida. I came to work one day, and true story, I walk in the office 8 o'clock in the morning. I've got my coat and tie on, my little briefcase, whatever. And there's a sheriff standing in my office. I mean, this guy had the big ass hat and the big ass boots. And he goes, Richard Gillis? And I don't like it when somebody calls me Richard Gillis. And I go, yeah. And he hands me an envelope and he says, you've been served. And he walks out the door. I open this envelope. I look in. There's a broker suing me for $8,000 for unpaid commission. He said I owed him on a lease renewal. Long story short, he was right. I made a mistake. My predecessor, the previous general manager of the property, had made the lease and handwritten in the lease, realtor will be paid on all lease renewals. I missed that during the renewal of this tenant. This broker was right. He had reached out to me. I had not gotten back with him. He sued me. I called my boss. I said, I need an $8,000 check. So what happened? I explained. I got the check. I took it to him. I paid him. I went back to my office and I told Gay, the lady who ran the front office, I said, Gay, you and I are going to go through every single lease. At that time, we had 185 of them. And I said, we are going to make a cover sheet that is going to annotate any changes, whatever, made in any of our leases, period. So she went through all 185. I went through all 185. And I put what I called my lease abstract cover sheet on top of every lease. So when you open it, the very first thing you saw is on page 16, and note this, on page 3, note this, whatever.
Nice. Smart.
3 months, well, what I did, see, that when I had called my boss, he said, do you want the attorneys? And I said, no, I don't want the attorneys. I made a mistake. We're not going to fight this. And so anyways, but that had been the corporate. Now remember, 26 office parks. Mine was the smallest one. I had 400,000 square feet. The biggest one was like in Miami, where they had 2 million square feet. Richmond, Virginia had like 2 million square feet. Nashville had 1 million square feet. So anyway, My boss comes to town about 3 months later, and he opens up one of my leases and he looks and he goes, "What's this?" And I said, "Well, it's the cover sheet." I said, "Brad, I got really upset when I had to pay that $8,000. And I said, that's not going to happen again." So he looks down and he goes, "Whoa." Well, long story short, 3 months later, there were 26 general managers across the country going through all their leases, putting in a cover sheet. I saved the company millions of dollars in legal fees.
Wow.
And I didn't remember this till 10 years after I left that business, when I was working with a client in job search, heading towards this book. And it struck me. So anyways, the point that helps here is that I didn't have those values anymore. The company was sold off. It was a REIT. It went off. It moved on, all that stuff. And I even called some of my former coworkers. They didn't remember any information. So I think I took a 1% of my legal budget that was allowed annually, because I remembered how much money I was allowed annually to spend on lawyers, on legal. And I took 1% of that budget and I multiplied it out times 26 office parks. And I figured I saved the company between $1.5 and $2.5 million annually.
And you went conservative.
And I was very, very, very conservative, because who knows how many of these were, especially being a little guy, my little office park versus the guy in Miami he probably had the biggest, fanciest firm probably in the nation working with him. So my point is, I would take this story I just told you. I want my client to write it down: who, what, where, when, why, and how. Then I look at it and I help them convert it to a single sentence. And in my case, I was responsible. This is what and wow. The what is, I was responsible for creating a commercial lease document. The wow is, that resulted in. Anytime you tell me something you did, follow it with resulting in and tell me the punchline, because that's going to get somebody's attention. I was responsible for creating a commercial lease document that saved the company on the order of $1.5 million annually. Now, if I was to apply to a real estate firm and sit down and tell them that one sentence, they're going to say, "Wow, that's the key." Then they're going to follow up with, "How did you do that?" And they're really not saying, "How did you do that?" What they're really saying is, "Can you do that for me? If you can do that for me, I need to hire you." And that's why my clients who go through this model are very successful in landing their next position. But it's because I put them through this model, which, by the way, is my job book. That's on Amazon right now. And it's called Job with an exclamation.
Is that the part in the book where you mentioned the defensible statement and the perfect elevator pitch?
Yes. And this is, I was responsible for creating a commercial lease document, saved my company $1.5 million. Could I tell you more about that? Who's going to say no?
Yeah. How can you do that for me?
Now listen, if you are an accounts payable clerk and you can say, "I was able to save my company about $5,000 a month in accounting costs for doing X," don't you think somebody's going to say, "Whoa, tell me how you did that?" Because somebody who's making $35,000 a year to save $5,000 a week, whoa, we need to share best practices. And that's what happens. Best practices comes from this stuff.
Yeah, I could see the tremendous value in that. Rick, where can people find you? Where do you live online?
rickgillis.com. And best place to contact me, although you can do it certainly through rickgillis.com, is LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I'm an open networker, or follow me. I don't know what the book is going to do. I may be turning off connections. I mean, that would be the best of all, but I'm not that arrogant to say that's going to happen anytime soon. I like my connections. I like working with people. I like helping where I can. And so I hope tomorrow, with the release of the book, I will be spending more time putting blog postings up in support of ideas and questions that people send me that they want to talk about. I'll be putting up articles on LinkedIn. And Luis, I'm available for you, man. Anytime that you get an audience or somebody that wants something about this, I'm available. Let's talk.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Rick. Thank you. And let me tell you, Rick is definitely true to his word. He has definitely been accessible to me and my wife. And we just really connected since I saw you in person. So I'm very glad. So remember, go to rickgillis.com. I will be putting that link in the show notes, as well as Rick's LinkedIn. Rick, one more thing before you leave. We were talking about elevator pitches. So I usually like to ask my guests, if you were on an elevator with somebody, it's going to be a very short ride, probably 60 seconds. They're not going to ever see you again. What is one takeaway that you would like for them to have after having met you in that short elevator ride?
I'll tell you what, and I appreciate what you said, 60 seconds. I would tell you, you need to have a pitch ready for 20 seconds because you may not even get 60. And
True.
so I would like to tell you that I have hi, my name is Rick Gillis. I'd like to tell you I'm really very proud of a book I recently published called Leveling the Paying Field, a groundbreaking approach to achieving fair pay. I created a model called the Quotient that helps individuals find fair pay and compete in the enterprise. That's what I would say. And that was a good one too, man. You caught me on that. I wasn't ready for that.
I love it. Absolutely. Absolutely. Flying colors. So ultimately, yeah, be ready to sell yourself. You're not boasting, because I like the way that you said that, because you have the numbers to back it up. And that's where the quotient comes in.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing, it's always going to be on numbers. And I'll tell you what, Luis, one last thing I want to finish. People ask me, why you? How did you get to write this book about pay disparity? Like I told you earlier, mostly white, male. Who am I to write this book when it's mostly women, people of color? The fact is, when I was 16 years old, true story, I had a part-time job making more. My mother was raising me and my brother, and I had a part-time job making more money than my mother was making, working 5.5 days a week, full time.
Wow.
And so at 16, I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know how to do anything about it. My mother literally gave me an allowance out of my paycheck every week. We kept the rest for the house. And no boo-hoos here. In 3 or 4 years, she discovered real estate and became very successful as a real estate not commercial, but a real estate salesperson. But for 3 or 4 years there, it was pretty tough. And I remember making more money than my mom when I was 16 years old, and I knew that was wrong. And so everything I have done has brought me to this place. And I think that seed was planted so long ago that, I got to tell you another thing too. I'm really proud of the title, Leveling the Paying Field. That was me. That wasn't the publisher who came up with that. And I am really proud. And that's a God wink. That was a gift. When I came up with that, I went, that is it. That says the whole thing right there. And I'm very proud of the title of this book.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you had some divine inspiration when it hit you. It's like, yes, this is it.
Oh, if I was big, I'd have punched a hole in the door.
That is great. Thank you so much, Rick. I wish you the best of luck with this new book. I know you don't need it because, you put in the hard work of all these years.
I'll take it all. I'll take all the luck I can get, man. And all the God winks and all the luck. Heck yeah, I'll take them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So for those of you listening, definitely check this out. RickGillis.com, Leveling the Paying Field, available at RickGillis.com on Amazon. And if you're not, here in the US, just go to RickGillis.com and you have it linked. You can order it anywhere. So thank you very much, Rick. I appreciate you stopping by as always. And I know books are like tattoos, right? Nobody just does one and done. I know you've done several already, I would imagine. Down the line, you're just going to continue.
This is my 7th book. It's the first one traditionally published, but it's my 7th book. And I don't have another one in mind yet, but somebody's going to say something and then boom, I'll get started on something next.
Right. I could see it already.
Thank you, man.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Everyone, thank you for tuning in. As always, if you have any questions, send me an email, luis@onmywaytowealth.com, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to On My Way to Wealth. If you have any questions, please send me an email at luis@onmywaytowealth.com. The information provided here is for information and education purposes only. The opinions expressed herein are solely those of myself, unless otherwise specifically cited. Material presented is believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations are made by my firm or myself about other parties' information or accuracy or completeness. All information or ideas provided should be discussed in detail with a financial advisor, accountant, or legal counsel prior to implementation. Thank you.